Welcome to Really Strange. On this channel we explore the darker side of history, from cases of demonic possession, accounts of alien abduction, to terrifying encounters with cryptids. If you enjoy true stories and love a good scare, you're definitely in the right place. In today's video we'll be taking a closer look into the cruel and unusual punishments developed to identify a witch. As Europe and North America were swept up in the frenzy of anti-witch hysteria during the 16th and 17th centuries, numerous innocent people, including men, women and even children, were subjected to brutal and torturous witch tests to prove their innocence. However, long before the women of Salem, Massachusetts were branded as witch-like monsters, witches were regarded as powerful priestesses who provided healing, childbirth, and sage advice to kings in ancient societies. But as history progressed, patriarchal societies became intimidated by their influence and accused them of demonic possession to undermine their power. Scholars believed that the rise of Christianity played a significant role in triggering the witch hunts of Europe and North America. By the end of the Salem witch trials in 1693, 4 accused witches had died in prison, 1 was pressed to death, and 19 others were hanged, marking the tragic end of America's anti-witch hysteria. Meanwhile, in Europe, the witch hunts continued well into the late 18th century, leading to the execution of between 40,000 and 60,000 people for witchcraft. The unfortunate victims of these witch hunts were subjected to a range of bizarre and inhumane tests, from being weighed against the Bible to enduring torture. These tests were designed to prove the guilt of the accused and often resulted in their conviction and execution. This is a list of 7 cruel and unusual tests designed to catch a witch. The swimming test. During the height of the witch hunts in Europe and North America, countless individuals were subjected to a range of bizarre and torturous tests to prove their innocence or guilt. One of the most absurd and impossible of these tests was known as swimming a witch. The test was based on the belief that witches, being creatures of the devil, could not be baptized and were therefore immune to water. It was believed that if a suspected witch was thrown into the water, she would float due to the devil's power, thereby proving her guilt. Conversely, if she sank, she was considered innocent. To administer the test, the suspected witch would be stripped of her clothes and bound hand and foot. She would then be thrown into a body of water, such as a river or pond. If she floated to the surface, she would be deemed a witch and would be executed. If she sank to the bottom and drowned, she was considered innocent, but her fate was already sealed. The test was widely used throughout Europe and North America, and many innocent people fell victim to it. In some cases, accused witches were given a chance to confess and repent before the test, but this was often done under duress or torture. The swimming a witch test was not only barbaric, but also impossible. The human body is naturally buoyant and will float in water, regardless of a person's spiritual or moral standing. Therefore, the test was not a reliable way of determining guilt or innocence, and led to the deaths of countless innocent people. The witch cake test. During the Salem witch trials of the 17th century, a peculiar method was used to detect witches, known as the witch cake. This cake was made from a mixture of rye meal and the urine of the suspected witch. The belief behind this bizarre practice was that witches had the ability to cast spells that caused people and animals to fall ill. By feeding the witch cake to a dog, it was thought that the dog would become possessed and reveal the identity of the witch. The witch cake was typically made by mixing the urine of the suspected witch with rye meal and baking it into a cake. The cake would then be fed to a dog or other animal, such as a cat or a cow, which was believed to be under the spell of the witch. If the animal exhibited symptoms of possession, such as convulsions or strange behaviour, the person who baked the witch cake and the suspected witch would be deemed guilty. This method was used in the case of Tituba, a slave who was accused of witchcraft in Salem in 1692. Tituba was forced to confess to being a witch, and was then asked to make a witch cake with her urine to determine the identity of other witches in the community. After feeding the cake to a dog, the animal reportedly acted strangely, leading to the arrest of several other women who were accused of witchcraft. However, this practice was not a reliable way to detect witches, and often led to the false accusations and execution of innocent people. The use of the witch cake method in Salem and other parts of Europe and North America demonstrates the superstitious and irrational nature of the witch hunts of the time. It also highlights the desperate and cruel measures that were taken to identify and punish those suspected of witchcraft, regardless of whether or not they were guilty. Marks from the Devil Test. During the witch hunts of the 16th and 17th centuries, one of the methods used to identify witches was to search for the witch's mark on their bodies. These marks were believed to be the evidence of the devil's touch, and therefore proof of the witch's guilt. The search for witches' marks was often carried out by prickers, or witch finders, who were individuals paid by communities to identify and capture witches. These prickers would use a sharp instrument, such as a needle or pin, to poke and prod the accused person's skin, looking for a spot that did not bleed or hurt. If such a spot was found, it was considered to be the witch's mark. Witches' marks were often thought to be located in hidden or intimate areas of the body, such as the genitals or under the armpits. They were also believed to be insensitive to pain and numb to the touch, and some were said to resemble the suckling marks left by a vampire or the devil. Once a witch's mark was found, the accused person was often subjected to further torture and interrogation to extract a confession. This included being stretched on the rack, tied to a stool and dunked in water, or being forced to undergo sleep deprivation or starvation. Witch's Touch Test. During the infamous witch hunts of the 16th and 17th century, various tests were used to determine whether a person was a witch. One such test was known as the Cursed Touch Test, which involved bringing the accused person in contact with someone who was believed to be under a witch's curse. The Cursed Touch Test was often carried out by placing the hand of the accused person on the afflicted person's skin or clothing. If the afflicted person experienced relief from their symptoms or felt any kind of sensation, it was believed to be proof that the accused was a witch and had placed a curse on them. This test was particularly effective in generating accusations against individuals who were already seen as social outcasts, such as elderly women or those with physical deformities. They were accused of having cursed someone and causing their misfortunes. The Cursed Touch Test was often used in conjunction with other forms of torture and interrogation to extract confessions from the accused person. They were often subjected to brutal methods, such as being stretched on the rack, burned at the stake, or drowned in water. Recite the Bible Test. Reciting the Bible flawlessly from memory was one of the tests used to determine whether a person was a witch during the infamous witch hunts of the 16th and 17th centuries. This test was based on the belief that witches had made a pact with the devil and were therefore unable to properly recite religious texts. The accused person would be asked to recite passages from the Bible without any mistakes, omissions, or additions. If they failed to do so, it was considered evidence that they were in league with the devil and had no true faith in God. This test was particularly difficult, even for those who were deeply religious and had devoted their lives to studying the Bible. The sheer amount of material to memorize, along with the pressure of performing flawlessly under the scrutiny of the accuser, made it nearly impossible to pass. Furthermore, the test was often used to target individuals who were already seen as outsiders, such as women, the elderly, and those with physical or mental disabilities. Such people were often accused of being witches and subjected to torture and other forms of abuse until they confessed or were found guilty. Weighing the witch against the Bible test. One of the most bizarre and absurd tests used during the witch hunts of the 16th and 17th centuries was the weighing of the witch against the Bible. This test was based on the belief that witches had made a pact with the devil, which gave them supernatural powers, and that these powers made them weigh less than a normal person. To perform this test, the accused person would be tied to a large scale and weighed against a Bible. If the person weighed less than the Bible, it was considered evidence of their guilt and association with the devil. On the other hand, if the person weighed more than the Bible, it was thought that the Bible had driven out the devil and they were deemed innocent. Of course, this test had no scientific basis whatsoever and was nothing more than a superstitious practice. It was a cruel and arbitrary way to persecute those who were already seen as social outcasts. The accused person was often subjected to other forms of torture and abuse, including being burned at the stake or drowned in water. Even if they passed the weighing test, the test was essentially a means of justifying the persecution and punishment of anyone deemed to be different or non-conforming to societal norms. Ordeal by fire. The ordeal by fire was a form of trial used in the Middle Ages, an early modern period, to determine the guilt or innocence of a person accused of various crimes, including witchcraft. In the context of witch trials, the ordeal was based on the belief that witches possessed supernatural powers that made them resistant to pain or allowed them to heal rapidly from injuries. There were different variations of the ordeal by fire, and here are a few examples. Walking over hot coals or red-hot ploughshares. The accused would be required to walk barefoot over a series of hot coals or red-hot ploughshares. It was believed that if the person was a witch, they would not feel pain or would quickly recover from any burns sustained. Holding hot iron. In this version, the accused would be asked to hold a heated iron bar in their hands for a certain period, often while walking a specific distance. If they showed no sign of pain, or if their hands healed rapidly afterward, they were considered a witch. Burning with heated objects. The accused's hands or feet would be subjected to burning or scalding using heated objects, such as tongs, pokers, or boiling water. It was believed that witches wouldn't feel pain or would heal unnaturally quickly from the burns. If the person didn't feel pain, or if the burns healed rapidly, they were considered a witch. These ordeals were based on the premise that God, or supernatural forces, would protect the innocent and reveal the guilty. However, they were often severely flawed and led to the suffering and death of many innocent people. The accused were subjected to extreme pain and torture, which could result in false confessions or cause irreversible physical damage. Witch hysteria lasted for several hundred years, with estimates as high as 100,000 for the total number of people executed. The last recorded execution in Europe happened in 1782, when Anna Golde was killed in Switzerland. Some sources also name Barbara Zonk, killed in Prussia in 1811, as the last person executed, but this is held in dispute because records of her trial do not mention legal charges of witchcraft. In the United States, the final recognized legal trial for witchcraft took place decades later in 1878, and perhaps not surprisingly, centered around Salem, Massachusetts. Thankfully, the trial was dismissed by the courts and did not end violently for anyone involved. As the legal recognition of witch tests faded away, so did the hysteria surrounding witches in the 18th century. This was in part due to the court's imposition of higher standards for evidence. However, the cultural impact on the witch hysteria has remained to this day. Depictions of witches and witch trials are still commonly found in pop culture, and the phrase witch hunt is often used to describe questionable or excessive searches for wrongdoing. Fortunately, the search for witches is a thing of the past. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. See you next time.